Okay, this is Lilliepie101's video saying, does Survivor need a buff? Which is interesting, because Survivor just got a pretty hefty buff in terms of having the ability to have, you know, all the statuses on the side of what you're doing, like doing totems, doing gens. Even the progress of the gens came through on day of recording, so that's a pretty big update. It's a pretty big update. That's a lot of info. So it's interesting that this video is now proposing that Survivors need even further of a buff, possibly. So that's something. That's interesting, and I would like to see what they have to say about it. This is their channel, so if you have not subscribed, please go ahead and take a minute or two to go over and subscribe to the homie, because you know we as responsible adults should support support the official release of these videos. Please go subscribe right now, because this is their content and they worked really hard on it. So just like if anybody, you know, I've had people react stuff to my videos before. It was more like a response and stuff like that. Please go support them because I work hard on my videos, so I understand what it's like. So please make sure that you respect them as well by giving them the subscriber-oni. So yeah.
Hey guys, Lilliepie101 here. Some of you have probably already seen me around, but maybe some of you haven't. But I'm a full-time content creator and Twitch partner. I have about 6,000 hours in DBD, primarily a Survivor main, although I play killer on and off stream to grind achievements, archives, or adepts. And I'm also
usually when people have quote-unquote reacted to my content, it's just going, everything he said in this commentary video is so wrong and stupid. And it's just like, okay, cool. Glad I could jar your brain today.
Which I know most people cringe at, but I like to think I'm still the same before and after becoming one. Now, I'm making this video today because I've noticed my experience with DBD going downhill, which is kind of unusual for me.
Same.
I haven't really faced much burnout after thousands of hours of playing, and I'm usually still excited to play, just not as much lately. And I don't usually make these types of videos, but I would typically edit matches down from my stream, and
Gary liked you, true.
I can't even do that most recently because content for Survivor is incredibly stale at the moment. And about a week ago—
yeah, I kind of hate Survivor right now. I'm not gonna lie. Like, you guys saw that today. It's like, oh god, I didn't mean to click that. Oh no. Yeah, Survivor's really awful right now. Survivor is kind of trash. I kind of hate Survivor right now. Cause like, here's a good example. So this is today, right? This is just today.
That kind of broadly explains matches down from my stream.
Okay. So like today, so we played 3.5 hours of Survivor, right? We played 3.5 hours of Survivor. Out of all of those matches, where there weren't at least 2 of the meta slowdown perks, we had the Wraith, who had 1 slowdown, and there was the Dredge. Didn't the Dredge have slowdown? Right, 2. I mean, case in point, out of 3.5 hours of gameplay, base camping Bubba didn't. You're right. Out of 3.5 hours of gameplay, we had two gamers not using a similar build. Out of 3.5 hours of gameplay, we had 2 killers that weren't using a similar build to the other ones. Yeah, sure, maybe it was Eruption Overcharge. Sure, maybe it was Scourge Hook and then Eruption, or Scourge Hook and then Call of Bran. But like, it was always some form of those 5 perks, like the 5 most meta slowdown perks, showing up. And it may have been different killers, but you know, those perks, you know, kind of played the same way, especially with like the Overbrine Eruption, where it's just like kick, get value, kick, get value, kick, get value. So it's just like, even though the killers are different, it's like the matches feel incredibly, yeah, different killers, same game. Like, literally exactly what it's like it didn't feel like I was playing different matches. It felt like I was, and there were multiple nights. We had more than one night tonight. All playing the same way. Hey, Ray, thank you so much for the follow, friend. I appreciate that. It's very, very kind of you. Hope you're having a good night today, friendo. We're doing React Andy content, so if you want to participate, you're more than welcome. Yeah, it's like, out of 3.5 hours of matches, only 2 of my matches really felt unique. The rest kind of, you know, devolved into the same thing. And I think that's, you know, that is probably DBD's greatest strength, is that it's an ASIM, which means all matches should be feeling different.
Just standing there.
Menacingly. Yeah, like, all matches should feel different, or at least relatively different. Like, it's the different maps, this is the different killers, this is the different perks, this is the different survivors. Like, the game should feel different and dynamic. I shouldn't be sitting here at the end of a long play session that was almost 4 hours, only thinking of 2 games that really stood out to me. Where, like, oh, they actually ran different perks, or, hey, things actually went differently. And the other, you know, each match is 10 minutes. Why does only 20 minutes out of a 3.5 hour play session feel unique? That's a problem. That's a really big problem, that after 3.5 hours of game time, only 20 minutes of that felt different. Everything else felt synonymous. So, yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like, you know, like, I should, like, there's no surprise or shock anymore, right? Like, being on your toes is a good way to phrase that, Toto. Totos. Like, I'm not like, oh, wow, that's crazy. You ran Hex Face of Darkness. I've not seen people get value out of that perk. It's always just like, okay, which of the 5 slowdown are you running? Every single game. Which of the 5 slowdown? I know you have at least 2. Which ones are they? And a lot of the time you have 3 or more, right? Like, it's like every single match is kind of like morphing into itself. Like, I was sitting here trying to think, I'm like, okay, well, we had 2 knights that did that. We had a plague who did that. The plague was the one on RPD. Then there was a knight on shelter, and there was a knight somewhere else. Like, it's like I had to, like, literally sit here and think, I'm like, what was unique about that match? Because I literally don't remember it, because they're all running the same stuff and playing vaguely the same way. And it's just like, when the strongest strength of DBD is its asymmetry, and every match is starting to boil down into a similar experience, there's something wrong. There's something deeply, deeply wrong.
And I can't even do that most recently because content for Survivor is incredibly stale at the moment. And about a week ago, I made a Twitter thread, which I'll link below in the description, that kind of broadly explains the frustrations that I have with the current state of the game, especially as Survivor. Overall, I like the direction the DVD is going, but it's far too easy to oppress this killer at the moment.
Yeah, and I do want to say that is that besides this, the game has done a lot of really, really good things, like get rid of, like, old Dead Hard. Old Ruin Undying was kind of annoying. Like, there's so many things that just, like, a lot of map balances have been nicer, despite the fact that Garden of Joy and stuff, and, like, New Haddonfield and stuff like that are bad. A lot of the map remakes ended up being okay, right? Like, they are generally doing a lot of good things as well. It's just, like, it feels like for every step forward, we take, like, 2 steps back as well. And that's just, like, I don't know. Like, it's like, I don't know how to phrase it. It's like, it feels like we take 1 step forward, we take 2 steps back at the same time. It's like, okay, well, we got rid of a lot of the ugly, awful things about the old meta, but now there's just, like, way worse things in this meta that are really, really insufferable. It feels stale, yeah. It makes it feel really, really stale.
What it really boils down to is most killers want to win, which is very fair. But because there's currently no true cap to how oppressive a killer can be, taking the easy route is what most killer players are going to do, even if it means playing cheap or making the other side miserable in the process, which is a huge issue for Survivor.
This is what I was talking about earlier, right? This is what I was talking about earlier, is that Knight, theoretically, is a long time to down killer because his Knights take so long to chase, and unless he's positioned himself very efficiently, he is going to have a hard time downing them, right? Like, see, theoretically, he's a long time to down killer. But he doesn't need to be good at chase, because so many perks don't require the down anymore that are really good, like Cobb, like Overcharge, and stuff like that. A lot of, like, the best perks in the game don't require a down anymore, or even if you finally do get that down, the effect, which is like the effect of Eruption, where it's both in cap and gen regression, and the gen continues regressing, so it does 3 whole effects to a gen, all of them being really good. Like, you don't have to be good at chase anymore. You don't even have to really chase that much anymore, you know? Like, Knight doesn't like, it doesn't matter that Knight has kind of a bad chase. It's a guaranteed chase after a while, but it doesn't matter if he has bad chase, because if it also brings, you know, the Override Eruption meta, he doesn't need to be good at chase. Overcharge, Call of Bran will keep this gen slow while he's working on that one down that he's been working on for God knows how long. And then when he finally gets it, Eruption is so overwhelming, it makes up for the time that he lost. You're basically allowed to play bad and still win because of the new meta. You're allowed to play bad and still win. Right? You can play bad and still win. And that's why this meta feels bad, is because a lot of things that happen to you, both on Killer and Survivor, are inherently super cheesy. They're not... people aren't playing well, they're just playing with perks. If somebody brings over Brian Eruption and they just kick a lot of gens, that's not skillful. You didn't do anything crazy. But you're getting rewarded as if you did. Same thing as, like, you know, on the Survivor side, if you're trying to combat that, you bring in, like prove brand new part and stuff, and, like, hyper-focus stakeout, stuff like that. You didn't really play well, you just kind of brought the right perks. Like, you didn't do anything skillful to make the effects of those perks go off. They just happened, right? So we're both sides are in this, like, weird zone where, like, the things that are winning the game aren't inherently skillful. And this isn't a skill-based matchmaking system, where the things that are winning the game don't require a whole lot of effort, so you know the other person is, like, winning, and they didn't really earn it, and it feels bad. Yeah, exactly, Wes. Like, one of the greatest skills you can learn as Killer is not overcommitting to a chase. Overcommitting to a chase is like the death of a game. You will lose. You will lose that match, or at least you should. But now, you know, because of kick perks, you can just stop your really, really long chase, kick a gen real quick, and it will regress so far, even though you shouldn't have been in that chase that long to begin with. It's just like the things that are really, really good in this game right now are super cheesy and require no effort, and it just feels bad. It just feels bad. Hey, Zach.
So of course, Killer players are gonna play the easiest way possible. Gamers are gonna game.
Well, everybody,
but it's the good faith
not just
argument
killers.
that makes it so hard. Sure, we could say go next or find your own fun, but when most are choosing to play
That's what I hate. That's what I hate the most about this is like there is definitely that mentality out there is like you need to just find your own fun, right? You just need to find your own fun. You just need to be more positive. And it's like I was positive. I was very, very positive. I enjoyed a lot of stuff about this game. I still enjoy a lot of stuff about this game. Like, people always say, like, oh, you know, try to find your own fun and stuff like that. And I do, for the most part. It just gets exhausting when you have to do it too much, right? It gets exhausting when you have to do it way too much. And that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, I keep having to do that over and over and over again. And it's like, at a certain point, it's like, it's not me anymore. It's not my attitude. It's the game, right? Like, if I have done everything in my power to, like, adjust my attitude and I'm still not having a good time, maybe it's not my attitude, maybe it's the game.
Start choosing to play that way, there really is no escaping from it. This isn't to say there aren't Survivor issues either, but this is a video based on Survivor and one where the issue is a little bit more pressing in my opinion. I've also noticed people complaining about Survivors running meta perks like Reassurance, DS, Off the Record, etc.
Reassurance is only good in coordinated squads. DS is useless. Off the Record is okay. Prove, hyperfocus stakeout are way, like, that combo and alignment toolboxes are way more effective than anything she just mentioned. Way more effective than anything she just mentioned. That may be the meta perks, right? I mean, you could be quote unquote the meta perks, I guess, but like, those are not the problem perks on Survivor.
But most of these only work if you actually let them. Plus, some of them get disabled in-game, like DS, like Off the Record. But it's frustrating when you can't really do anything and you get shoehorned into a build that might be useless, considering how the Killer plays. Some people could easily argue the same thing for Killer, but if I'm running a meme build and I notice the Survivors start, you know, really slamming me, I could easily make up for it by camping, by tunneling.
I say this a lot too. That's why I prefer Killer. That's why I prefer Killer a lot. Like, even after, like, I preferred Killer because obviously just because, like, I like horror games, right? I like horror games, I like horror movies, and obviously getting to play as the Killer from those, like, iconic movies and stuff, it's really, really cool. And, you know, for the longest time, you know, I was a very hardcore biased Killer main. I still prefer Killer. Killer still is my favorite role. And I thought that, like, after... I feel like I thought that after, like, I thought that after playing Survivor 50-50, I would be like, oh, well, Survivor's fun, too. And I really enjoy Survivor, too. But I find myself still enjoying Killer more because I feel like I have more input into a match. Like she's saying, like, if a Survivor team starts sweating really hard on me, I can camp, I can tunnel, I can throw somebody in the basement, I can start sweating by, like, just having more efficient chases, making smarter decisions, like, mid-match. I have more of an input there. if a killer decides that they're going to bring quad slowdown and just protect a 3-gen, unless I was in comms beforehand, if I didn't bring the right perks beforehand, I'm kind of just like, I kind of just got to deal with it. Like, I can't do small things like pre-dropping pallets, holding W. There's safer plays I can make. There's definitely safer plays I can make to try circumvent this, but, like, in general, like, I'm kind of powerless to do anything if a killer sweats. I kind of can't, like, turn on the intensity switch like I can with killer. I can make a decision, I can make a reaction to play harder and get better results. Survivor, you're kind of stuck. It's kind of about what you just predeterminedly decided to do before the match that decides the outcome. So that's just pain. Yeah, like if you decide to bring something fun, like a power struggle build, like the dude is bringing, like, you know, nowhere to hide over Bran Eruption, it's like, like, what? That's not gonna help. There's no way for you to get, like, play harder with that build and, like, you know, fight against somebody who's going that hard. And that's why I always enjoy killer more, even nowadays, because it's like, I don't like having that lack of input, the ability to, you know, put myself in there and switch on the dime. You can't do that with Survivor.
But if I choose not to do that, the worst case scenario is like I get a couple of hooks and I get 4 outed. Like, that's the worst case scenario. But I still make a decent amount of BP, and the Survivor still got to play and get a decent amount as well. A pretty well-rounded game. But overall, if I choose to make up for my lack of skill by camping and tunneling, the Survivors, I can make it so they just don't get to play. And I'll still make similar, if not less, BP. But from my experience, most killer players don't wait until a game goes bad. They will camp, tunnel, use force slows, etc. off rip because there's just no cap. And MMR will reward that, but I will get punished because I died to it. I think it's a very flawed and a very lopsided system, if I'm being honest. And keep in mind, you can play how you want, but the mentality of wanting to only win with little to no resistance is pretty skewed, and it rewards very poor skill, and it only hinders you from getting better. And to think that you'll get the 4K every single time is silly. You're basically saying that nobody could just ever possibly be better than you. But the worst of all that's to come out of this has been seeing people play less, stop playing altogether, or play killer in the exact same way to take out the frustrations instead of learning, thus repeating a cycle. It just feels pretty awful to see when you're very passionate about something like DBD. Regardless, the culprit isn't one thing, it's many. I heavily believe skill-based matchmaking started it, but 6.1 only worsened it. And let me preface, I may primarily play Survivor, but that's because my streaming audience is built around playing Survivor. Most of my audience is Survivor mains, and as a full-time content creator, it's not something that you just easily switch over from. But I've been playing since late 2019, so like I said before, I do have a lot of killer experience, and I happen to be very well versed in it. So whenever I play killer, people are typically surprised, like from when I played on DBD's official Twitch channel as Spirit for Into the Fog, which I'll also link down below in the description. But here's some things that I think that would help change the flow of DBD at the moment. I'm going to start with some on a little bit of the smaller scale, some on a larger scale, and some of these may take a while or even years to implement. I don't know, but these are definitely things that I think would help in the grand scheme.
Because like we found out in that Peanuts post that he made, most people are still playing solo. Most people in this game still play solo. And most people play solo Survivor. That's like the most populous thing that happens in this game. Is solo queue Survivor. Like, having your most casual and easily accessible role be so painful is like, it's not good for the game health. That like the most easily accessible way to play the game is not very good.
Number 1 is hiding the prestige level. So previously they did the ranks for this exact reason, so that people didn't feel like they were getting unfairly matched up and whatnot. They need to do this with prestige level, because ever since becoming P100 with my Claudette, my main, I have definitely experienced a lot more camping, tunneling, slugging, Moris, BM, you name it, just for playing P100 Claudette. Yeah,
so people assume that like with like, this is kind of retreading some stuff I said in that that showing Swiss video that I made earlier this week. People automatically assume that a P100 is going to play sweaty and intensely. If you have a P100 character, you have obviously soaked a lot of time into this game to be able to get that character P100. With that probably comes some inherent awareness of the game that's probably higher than the average player. That is fair. I will give you that. But to assume that every P100 player wants to play hard every time they play is just factually not true. It's just factually not true. But I feel like what happens is like with a lot of the reason that like people play the way they do on Killer in general is they don't want to take the risk that they do, right? Like, they don't want to take the risk that possibly this P100 will sweat on me and, like, ruin my experience. So I'm just going to take them out early, or I'm just going to focus them early. So in case I'm wrong, I already handled the situation, right? Which is why people do a lot of stuff in this game. Like I said, like why does somebody camp and tunnel at 5 gens? Because they don't know if the match is going to be hard, but they know it won't be a hard match if they just do that early, right? They know for a fact it won't be a hard match if they do that early, you know. But most people just like a certain character, right? Like my Jeff's Prestige 55. It's not because I care about Survivor, or I'm like super intensely passionate about Survivor. It's just because Jeff's cool. I like Jeff. So I just want to pre-100 him because I'm like, hey, I want a lot of items. I want a lot of stuff. I want a lot of add-ons. Like, and I don't want him to look. I want a cool little badge to be like, hey, I like Jeff a lot. But like, you know, I can't play. Like when I play Jeff often, I just get, I get a lot of like sweat, just like she does when she plays Bonnet. And I'm like, it's like I don't want to play my favorite character anymore, just because it's like people take the game more seriously when I do, and I don't want that. Yeah, exactly. That's having that with Nia too. Show it pregame. Yeah, it'd be great to show it in the after game lobby, like in the results screen. Yeah, perfect place for it. Perfect place for it. Pregame, I don't think there's a reason to show it pregame. Not to the killer, anyways. You can show it to the fellow survivors. But to show it to the killer? No, I don't think there's a reason to show prestige level to the killer in 3 lobbies. You don't get to see that it's like a prestige 89 blight before you enter the match as survivor. You don't get to see their prestige level. You don't even get to see what killer it is. So why do they get to see your prestige level? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Hell, I could even last second swap, and I've been told by killers that it's a toxic P100 switch.
Yep.
I don't understand this, but P100, all it means is that somebody is invested in 100 million BP into one specific character. Number 2, make it so that killers cannot use their powers, aka their M2 at the hook. For example, artists cannot place up her crows at the hook. Meanwhile, Trapper, Hag actually can. I think this should be the same across the board. I think this is also going to be very crucial, especially since they were testing the auto-mooring thing. Just for example, imagine an Insidious camping Bubba with eerie flesh. The game would be over, and that's just it. Now, the majority of players in Dead by Daylight play solo queue.
Yep.
That would be absolutely miserable considering there's no grace period and there would not be enough time to get up. The game is just done. Number 3, change Dead Hard to be unaffected by endurance snacking so that it can be used with BT, off the record, adrenaline, and not necessarily countered by killer powers such as Legion's Frenzy or Slinger's Spear. I just know this one is going to be super controversial, but
buffing endurance?
I don't actually use Dead Hard myself, but I do encounter a lot of gamers that have used it and have been getting really good at it. Kind of sucks having your perk countered.
I feel like stacking endurance isn't the way to fix the situation. I feel like, for the most part, endurance is fine the way it is. Like, I do think that making M2s like universally, like with like the locker stuff with like Dredge, kind of more universal, that makes a little bit of sense to me. But adding more endurance states, we tried that. We tried adding more endurance states in the PTB for 6.1, and it was miserable. It was absolutely miserable. Like, people would just find ways to abuse that. And people did. People did. People would find ways to abuse it, and they did. They did find ways to abuse it. They literally did. And there was customs I would play with people where they were intentionally doing it, and I would have to hit somebody 5 times to down them. Like, I would have to hit somebody 5 times to down them. No. That would take us back to the era of old DBD, where you'd be in a chase and you like fairly would get the down, but then they dead hard to the pallet and they slam you with the pallet, and then they slam you with the pallet and they run to the next tile, and then they hop in the locker, you pull them out, and you get 58-second DS, and you have to start the chase all over again. That starts that crap again, and I'm not doing that. That shit is stupid. It was dumb, and it had no place in the game. We are not reintroducing that. That shit was stupid, and we're never going back. We are never going back to that. We're never going back into I dead hard to the pallet, now you're stunned, and even I should have been dead there, but now I'm not dead here, and now I'm going to go run to this and force locker DS, and now even though I should have been dead there too, I'm not dead now again. We're not doing that. We're not doing this whole second chance fiasco. I know that, Overbrine Eruption buys you a lot of second chances. We talk about that a lot. This is not a whataboutism thing. Like, both sides have a lot of second chances, and it's really obnoxious. We are not going back to just, stacking second chances on everybody again. Killers didn't want to learn and play around? No. I completely disagree. 1,100,000,000% disagree. I played that PTB, both public and customs. When people wanted to stack like 4 or 5 like endurance hits, they could. They literally could. And if you don't think that sweaty gamers would be out there in your pubs doing that to you, you were dead wrong. You used to biffle? Yes. Yes, brother. I used to biffle. Yes, brother. I did the testing. I was out there. Yes. 1,000,000,000%. Yes. If you don't think people would be out here with 4 or 5 health states doing that, yeah, they would be. Just like how all the killers are out here with Overbrine Eruption, having a field day because they don't have to think about, gen slowdown. People would be out here doing this. They would. So let's not introduce more second chance mechanics like having a bunch of endurance stacking again. Let's not. Let's not do that.
BT, or you can't pair with Off the Record or Adrenaline, or you happen to face a Legion or a Slinger, etc. Number 4 would be cycling Scorchooks. Obviously, the most popular Scorchook is Pain Res, but if a killer decides to...
Because, like, Scorchook... Okay, so, like, the problem with Scorchooks is that, like, they're a good idea because, like, the RNG of where the hook spawns could screw you over or it could be really helpful for you. So there's kind of like a, will I even make the hook aspect to it? But what happens typically with, like sweatier gamers is that they'll just down somebody and then, like, camp hook or proxy camp hook and just keep reusing the same Scourge hook over and over and over and over again. So it kind of defeats the balance of the perks. The perks are supposed to be balanced around the fact that the RNG of the hooks can be bad or it could be good. And you're taking a risk of, will you make the hook? Will you have that hook availability? But obviously if you just stand at the one hook and only take your downs near that hook, it kind of removes that balance factor, doesn't it? So I would be fine with this.
They can get value just by forcing hook trades again and again and again. However, if they were to cycle, it'd be an incentive to not camp, and it would fix an issue that Scorch hooks typically have anyways, which is spawning cluttered or on one side of the map.
Yeah, exactly. This would be a good thing for Scorch hooks too. This would be a buff, because if all of your hooks are, like, your Scorch hooks are on in one corner, and nobody wants to chase in that corner of the map, if you get one, suddenly you start rotating them around, and suddenly you have more availability in other places. Like, it gets rid of, like, when they're all clumped up, or they're just in a bad spot, they're in a dead zone where nobody wants to willingly go. Like, it fixes that too. So it's not even just like a survivor buff, that's just a buff to the perk in general.
Number 5, possibly a basement rework. I know a lot of people have talked about a second staircase for basement, but in addition to that, a lot of people automatically assume GG as soon as a survivor...
I don't think basement needs a rework. I think her earlier suggestion of, like, bringing M2s in line with each other, like, dredges to not work at hook, will fix the basement problem. Basement is a good catch-up tool for killer, and I don't think it should be removed from the game. I don't think it's archaic. I don't think it's weird. I think what gets annoying is when you have somebody like Bubba who can just insta-down people down there. Or Huntress who can just go down there and ready her hatchet at the bottom of the stairs and just wait for you to come down. Like, that's what's the problem. It's not basement itself. Basement is strong for killer, but I don't think it's unfair for killer. I think it's just the M2 stuff at hook that's the problem. And because, it's a tight, cramped space, it's hard to avoid the M2s. That's all. I feel like what you said earlier would fix that. The no M2 at hook. Basement's fine.
It's down over basement or near basement, which is pretty bad. That and some killers can still body block the top of basement on some maps.
That's not on purpose. They actually just fixed Autohaven, like the Autohaven realm today, for doing that. That's not on purpose. That's not an intended mechanic. That just keeps happening. They did fix that.
Number 6, make slowdowns not stack. Previously, I did do a video on this, but I'm not sure how well it holds up today. But 90 seconds of Gen's base and then having no cap for slowdowns is pretty brutal, and this is the part that really needs to be looked at, because with no cap, people are going to stack as many slowdowns as they feel necessary. Number 7.
I've always found this strange because, yeah, like what Zan said, it's like diminishing returns would fix so many problems in the game. Stacking slowdowns, diminishing returns. Stacking Gen Rush, diminishing returns. Stacking heal perks in a tanky medkit to heal in 2 seconds, diminishing returns. Like, this would fix so much stuff, and there's already diminishing returns in the game when you stack on a gen. Like, the gen still goes faster, but like Imagine stacking on gens without diminishing returns. But like, that is already a thing that the game can do with other aspects of the game and does do. So like, you could easily apply that to like all the bars in the game. Like, you could just apply that to all bars of the game. Like, any bar that's having a bunch of the same effects applied to it, just have it not be as potent for every effect that's reapplied. You can do that with so many different things. So many different things. And that would fix, like, that fix the super speed healing, that fixes gen rush, that fixes gen slowdown. It really does. It really does.
Maybe change the skill-based matchmaking criteria. Kills aren't necessarily skilled just because they get 4 kills, and survivors aren't necessarily skilled just because they escape via exit gate. I honestly feel like the emblem system promoted more well-rounded games, but skill-based matchmaking makes people sweat preemptively on both sides just because, which really shouldn't be the main focus of DBD. It was fine when it was casual, and it should have been fine. Number 8 would be a lot, but undo 6.1. My main issue was that there were way too many killer buffs that were introduced without gradual.
No, the killer buffs are fine. It's just the perks. Killer's in the best place it's ever been. Killer's now balanced. Killer as a base kit is great. Killer as a base kit across the board Killer as a base kit is fine. It's just the perks are bad. That's all. It's just the perks are frustrating. Killer as a base kit is fine. Undo all of 6.1? No. Yeah, it's mainly perks and add-ons. Like, Killer as a base kit is fine. Like you think Shift W pre-dropping is bad now? It's still frustrating, don't get me wrong. But pre-dropping Shift W was so much more powerful back in the day. Because they had a longer speed burst after getting hit. You didn't have the built-in spiffle, so you didn't catch up as quick. Like, it was like, you really want to go back to that era? You want to go back to that era? Be my guest. But, not for me.
Testing, but also the 40 perk rework as well. Some of the key things that I found really bad were, number 1, Bloodlust being buffed. Maps are already steadily being reworked to get rid of infinites and whatnot, and I don't really feel like Bloodlust is needed that much anymore. And if Bloodlust...
No, because you still have, like, Garden of Joy. You still have Garden of Joy. You still have a current Haddonfield with, like, the double windows and stuff. That's, yeah, that's, like, I get what she's saying, that, like, maps are improving, which, you know, a lot of the map remakes are nicer. But, like, when you have, like, Garden of Joy, like, God Window, and, like, stuff like that, Old Eerie was a good example, like, you may be happy removing Bloodlust from, like, a Wesker who sucks. Removing Bloodlust from, like a pig, for example, we had that pig video. Removing Bloodlust from, like, a pig who's barely even struggling to get anything anyway, like, oh, like, Garden of Joy, like, oh, like, ooh, pain. That would be absolute pain. I do feel like higher levels of Bloodlust probably not necessary. Like, maybe Bloodlust 3, maybe even 2 goes away. But, like, I don't. Yeah, maybe Bloodlust 3 and 2 aren't necessary, but definitely don't. Definitely, they for better or worse, they have decided that they're just gonna make really strong map setups. They're gonna balance some maps, but then just make others really, really bad as well. And we just gotta deal with that, for better or worse.
Does stay in the game, tier 1 max. Any further and you're only punishing survivors for looping well and rewarding the killer for playing poorly and making them think that they have a good chance at winning chases when it's not even from their own skill. Killer's cooldown on successful M1s being sped up by 10% would have been okay, but it basically gives killers 2 free stacks of Stabiffle, making max stacks technically 10, which is pretty rough. They should have adjusted Stabiffle in the process with this.
I agree.
Same thing
I
with
think Stabiffle should cap at 6.
speed towards kicking gens, pallets, walls, but no adjustments to brutal strength or anything else that affects kicking.
No, brutal's fine.
Also, survivors being given a 10% movement speed penalty after being hit by M1s is also pretty rough when you factor in the cooldown that I initially talked about.
No, this is fine. This is fine. We had that video last week where I showed you a match from 2020. I hit somebody. I M1 somebody at the drop down. No, not at a drop down. I hit her at the corner of, you know, Father Campbell's Chapel, and this Claudette made it all the way to the other side of Father Campbell's Chapel. Like, I hit her, and because of the speed burst she got from an M1, she made it the entire distance of a main building with her speed burst. I don't think people remember how obnoxious that used to be. I don't think people remember how boosted that used to be. I smacked her with an M1, and she made the entire distance of a main building with her speed burst from getting M1. That was silly. That was silly.
Also, pretty much all of the 40 perks that worked for both sides had major issues to me, and my biggest gripe is that meta did it and still doesn't necessarily mean bad.
Yep.
A few examples for this on Killer would have been removing the BP bonus for barbecue and chili,
Yep.
which incentivized people to spread out their hooks more for BP.
And corrupt.
Yeah! Didn't need to be changed necessarily. It was very strong for setup killers like Trapper and Hag, and getting it down and having it go away, just unnecessary.
Yep.
Also, Ruin being even further nerfed, not only in terms of regression, but immediately going away after one person dies. It was pretty fair, and you actually had to do your part by chasing survivors away from gens.
Yeah.
And then for Survivor,
I was just in combo with
Iron
Undying.
Will didn't necessarily need a nerf, as Shattered Spirit was nerfed not too long ago, but then they just suddenly bought it back. And in addition to that, tracking wasn't that hard as Killer, to be fair. I mean Spirit, and with or without players having Iron Will, I could still pretty accurately phase.
Iron Will got
Also,
unfairly nerfed. I feel like they could have just, like, Iron Will, like, was really, really strong, don't get me wrong. Because there's still times where the game bugs out in audio, and it's like as if they had old Iron Will, and I am having a hard time tracking them. Yeah, I feel like they could have just, like, slightly nerfed that perk and not, like, butchered it like they did. They did kind of, like, yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it, Toto. I think it would have one of the changes, not both. They just one or the other, and it would have been fine. Yeah, like, either have it deactivate with exhaustion or make the sound not the muffling not as prevalent. Like one of the two. not both. Not both.
Didn't need the penalty added for medkits.
Yeah, Conspirat's fine. I don't know why they changed that either.
DS receiving further nerfs after having conspicuous actions added only made tunneling easier, to the point where somehow head-on is more effective as an anti-tunnel perk because the stun time is simply longer in comparison.
Yep, I feel like that is, like, the biggest problem with the current meta is there's no anti-tunnel incentive. So whereas tunneling happened in old DBD, now tunneling happens, like, even if it's not happening to you, it happens almost every game. It's like every other game, either you or someone else is being tunneled. Someone on your team is getting tunneled at one point. And I feel like that's one of the most huge problems with the current meta, is that there's no anti-tunnel incentive, so it's just free. It's just free. You just do it, right? So if they could somehow reintroduce some sort of fear to just tunnel after somebody, I feel like you would see a lot of, like, survivors return to the game. You really would. Because I feel like that this is almost as big of a problem as, like, the stack slowdown meta, like the Overbrine meta. I feel like the anti-tunnel all being gone is kind of like a huge issue that does drive people away from the game.
There's more that I could talk about, but I'll just continue on with my regular list. Number 9, make BT/off the record not one and the same. I know this was previously removed so that endurance wouldn't stack and make Swifts or coordinated players strong.
What's against stacking endurance?
Survivors losing the collision for instances like this would be much better so that they can't body block and they aren't robbed of perk value. Number 10, make reassurance 12 meters minimum. Remove the hook instance limitation and instead make it like the PTB version.
People already don't use reassurance correctly. Reassurance is already a really great, fantastic perk. And if you guys actually watch, like, good teams use reassurance, or, like, go on like, actually, like, watch, like, people who play, like, competitive DBD where, like, reassurance isn't, like, the worst, like, people get tons of value out of that perk. Tons of value out of the perk. It's really strong. Really strong. Yeah, like, reassurance used well with a team or with coordination, very good. Very good. So I don't know about that.
It's on a 40-second cooldown with multiple usages. And if somebody wants to go next and deny the reassurance, they can. Maybe even base kit to punish campers further, which I don't think anybody can really get mad at it.
Base kit reassurance?
It only works if you let it. Camping with 90 seconds gens base.
But camping is sometimes required. Camping is sometimes required. No matter how you feel about it, camping is sometimes required. You can get mad or bored, but, like, sometimes it is just best to, you know, camp somebody out of the game. I think people get upset if, like, you know, somebody camps at, like, 4 or 5 gens. That's obnoxious. But if somebody's camping at 1 or 2 gens, they're just trying to win the video game, dude. If somebody camps at 1 or 2 gens, they're just trying to win. If they're not being obnoxious, they're not being sweaty or stupid. They're just, like, they're just trying to, like, play the video game. So by completely removing that as a tactic for killer entirely, by just making it base kit, like, it's just dumb. Yeah, also some situations require you to camp, like having the whole team around hook. If you have the whole team around hook, you shouldn't leave. you shouldn't leave. You should pressure all 3 people that are there. You know? So I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Basically ensuring somebody, even if you continually hook trade, just don't get to play the game. It's not as simple as just do gens, go next anymore. Number 11, revert DS and make it base kit possibly, the same way as BT. But realistically, it shouldn't be an issue considering conspicuous actions exist. Again, if you like do anything except for getting tunneled, it just goes away. Again, this only works if you actually let it.
That's not, no, not true. That is like, that, no, it's, she keeps saying this, like, I appreciate a lot of her opinions, but this just, it only works if you let it. Blanket statement she's just applying to everything is not true. It wasn't true with the camping, and it's not true with the tunneling. I know she's played this game a long time. I remember people hopping to lockers. Even when it deactivated, when they brought back deactivation for DS, people were hopping to lockers to force that. People would quite literally waste so much time not deactivating it just to come at you in the last 20 to 30 seconds of activation and force a DS to waste your time. And what I hear a lot of people say in retaliation to that is like, oh, well, that survivor didn't do anything for like a full minute. Isn't that wasted time? It's like, no, because if the other 3 are doing generators or doing something to progress the game, and one person's distracting, that matters. Yeah, the time was made up somewhere else, right? Especially if they, you know, for example, they're on comms, they're like, hey, go waste this time. I'm gonna go force my DS, and y'all are gonna, or body blocking, perfect example, or body blocking, where I'm trying to chase somebody who I know I don't want to tunnel, and they run in my face and force me to, right? Like, it's not just it only works if you let it. There was plenty of ways to force it. Plenty of ways to force it. Nor the person for others on gens, yeah, you just had complete info always of where everybody always was on the map. You know, if somebody was running in your face and trying to force DS and, you know, playing badly, you just always had complete info on where everybody else was, and you just, you know, keep seeking missiled to that person that was on a gen on the other side of the map. Just leave chase. Forehead. Yeah, that's not realistic. That'd be interesting, Volgan. That'd be interesting. I don't know. I didn't even think about that. Maybe just like, but I don't know. Because like that, I see what you mean. Like DS them off of like the locker would be like a lesser stun, so they can't use it that way. But like, people force it not in lockers as well, so that doesn't really cover everything. So might as well just not put it in. Yeah, there's definitely like ways to abuse DS. It's not it only works if you let it. That's definitely not true, like literally at all.
Implement base kit unbreakable as experimented with to negate slugging for the 4K and improve the overall slugging experience. 45 seconds is more than fine, and I think if you can...
Once again, this covers in another situation. Like, not all people slug nefariously. Not all people slug nefariously. Slugging isn't like... slugging is, once again, not one of those situations where it only happens if you let it. Slugging is one of those situations where sometimes you need to do that to catch up. Sometimes you need to do that to apply pressure. And if you just, you know, give everybody everything to, like, negate it, that's just...
in the chase within 45 seconds to go pick up a slug, or you just want to leave somebody slugged on the ground for more than 45 seconds, they just don't need to be on the ground.
Like Scar Bridge, yep, just delete those characters. Just kill them.
And again, it only works if you let it work.
No, that's... You say it one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind! If you say this statement for something it's not true about one more time, I am gonna lose my last brain cell I had present in my f***ing noggin! No, tunneling is not always, it happens if you let it. Camping is not always, it only happens if you let it. Slugging is not always, it only happens when I let it. That, you can't just apply this to every survivor thing that you want to have happen. You gotta have some empathy for what's happening on the other side. You really do. You really do. You can't just say all the, like, this is like almost willful ignorance, because I know she has tons and tons and tons of experience in this game. Does she not understand that, like, all these things can be forced or taken advantage of? Like, it's like, it just seems like, I know she's, like, admitted that she has her bias with the survivor side of things. That's fine. But, like, you have to be fully aware of how these things will be abused by your side, even if that's your side, right? You have to be aware and responsible about how the things you are suggesting will be abused by your side, even if they are the side. Right? You have to be aware about how these things will be abused. And it seems like after like the last 3 suggestions, or 4, or how many it's been, it's just like, oh, well, killers are just stupid if they do this. Let's just give base kit everything. Let's just give base kit everything. Let's just get, I don't know, let's just give them sprint burst base kit. Let's just throw in old BT, you know, let's throw in everything. Throw in sprint burst. Let's give them lithe base kit too. You know, whatever endurance happens to go off balance, if they fall off of something. Let's give them. I was gonna make the joke about base kit reassurance, but that was an unironic suggestion. Let's give them everything. It'll never be abused. The reason that the devs don't give these things is not because they're stupid. It's because there are ways that these things can be abused. We found that over with like boil over, right? Like when you over adjust a perk, it gets really nasty. So when we talk about giving something base kit, that's even bigger, right? And if you don't think about how these things will be abused by people, you're going to create a really nasty, awful meta. You really are. We're already in one, so we don't want to do that again. And it's just, you gotta consider how this stuff will be abused. And I feel like just with these last 3 or 4 of these, there was just like no care to understand how like a sweaty squad that wants to make people miserable will like just have a field day with like all of these. We'll just have a field day with all of these things. The same sentiment that she is experiencing at the beginning of this video in her pain points, where she's talking about stacking slowdowns and all this the free tunneling, and that lack of power, that lack of input, like I brought up earlier, that lack of input that she's experiencing, you're just going to be reintroducing that lack of input on the killer side if you just base kit everything and make everything super strong. Like if you just base kit everything, makes things super strong and abusable, you're creating that situation for someone else.
That's basically all I have for the video. It's just something that's been on my mind for quite a while, and like I said, I'll leave the links down below to all the different things that I was talking about in the video. Hopefully I get to make more DBD content in the future on a little bit more of a lighter note, but you guys can follow me on all of my other socials at Lilliepie101. You can also catch me streaming 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. CT on Twitch usually, every day except for Monday. And I'm open to new and possibly better ideas. These are just a few that I had floating around. I still love DBD at its core and I still have fun, but I enjoy much more of my time on Killer at the moment, on and off stream. I'm just passionate and I want everyone to be happy, on both sides.
Okay, anime things. Okay, but yeah, like I said, I don't think there's another way to say it. Is like there was a lot of good suggestions in there that cover stuff about like, you know, like the current meta with the perks being over adjusted, the like, you know, not having killers be able to just stand at hook and use their M2. But then they're like cycling Scourge was a good idea too. But like there's a lot of this that's just like I said, it's just like, it seems like I guess like a lot of these like may be perceived as like, oh well, this would fix everything. Well, yeah, but like a lot of these would reintroduce the exact same problems that we had with before 6.1 for Killer. Of like being able to abuse DS, being able to abuse a brand new base kit anti-camp perk, or like being able to like never slug again. Like it's like there's a lot of stuff that like abuse that would be introduced with their idea, right? With these ideas, a lot of abuse would be just be traded. It wouldn't be a okay, well, like now the game's balanced. It would just be like taking a lot of like the annoying stuff that is happening to survivors and just kind of shifting it back over to the killers. And it's just like, never agree with removing basement. No, I completely disagree. Basement's fine. It's just that killers that are able to just sit there and use their M2s right next to hook, and it's just a tight and close space. I guarantee you, if they remove that, like, your basement situations will be so much better. Your basement situations will be so much better. It's okay to have a strong killer catch-up mechanic. That is fine. It's just a way too easy with, like, Bubba, for example, to just sit there in the basement and call it a day, right? If you just do the whole thing with like, you know, no M2s near hooks, that like easy peasy lemon squeezy. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like a lot of this just give it to him. I think there's a lack of there's a lack of introspection onto how these things could be abused by a group, or even not even just a group, but like just by people moderately coordinated. Not even like full Swift, like moderately coordinated. Like I think there's a lack of introspection on how these things could be abused, and the abuse will happen. It just will. So it's like the street goes both ways, right? Yeah, I feel like in like a lot of these ideas were good, but a lot of them were very like scary in the sense that they kind of don't take into consideration like the kind of ideas that these things could be counter abused. These things could just put the abuse in the hands of survivors and not necessarily fix like abuse in the game in general of mechanics and stuff like that. So